Hi there, everyone. Welcome to our open banking webinar by Reinteractive. This is a first in a series of targeted webinars we'll be doing in a whole range of different areas to bring you some ideas about how you can leverage opportunities in different sectors as we're moving forward. I'm glad that you could all join us. I'm sorry that we're starting a little bit late, but now that we're live, we'll get rolling. So Reinteractive is a software development agency. We build software that's based on the web and also mobile. We've developed software used in more than 2 million applications worldwide, with over 200 applications built by us. And you can see some of our clients there. Our expertise is on very large-scale complex applications that work with a whole bunch of different technologies, from project conception, design, through to market deployment, hosting, and ongoing support. We're also a registered Salesforce partner and Amazon partner, so we can handle a full range of things for you. Today, we'll have two people speaking. First one is myself, Mikel Lindsaar. I'm the CEO and founder of Reinteractive, and I'll be giving you some ideas about what I think about with open banking and how we can move forward and what we can do with your opportunities and help you find good ways to move forward with that. Our second speaker will be Kerry. He'll be on about halfway through, and he's going to go over the best ways of actually ideating and coming up with plans and processes and ideas on how to actually take advantage of this platform. Now, we won't take the full hour. We're usually fairly fast on this, but if you do have any questions, make sure you ask them nice and early, and we'll interject as needed in the webinar and answer them, or we'll answer them at the end as well. So don't be shy. Ask as many questions as you like. So let's begin. First off, open banking arrives on the 1st of July 2019, which is only a month away, a couple of months away right now, 2 months away from the time of this webinar. It has as its basic premise the idea that the customer owns their data and they can share it however they want. Now, this is a major shift in ideology. If you look at how banks traditionally have your data, it's usually an absolute pain even to get some past statements of what you've spent. You have to log into proprietary web-based applications or portals or go into a branch to get that data, and sharing it is not the simplest thing. Some companies who want to access your data are even at the point now of asking for your username and password into your banking application if you want to apply for a loan or something like that, which actually in many cases is against the terms of use of that bank. So there's been a lot of people that have tried to work around this problem on all this proprietary access to information and data, but open banking promises to open that up. Now, the reason for this is the way we're doing business is changing. And what this means is, with the changing landscape of things like open banking and other technologies like that, it's easier for a business or a new startup or even an existing incumbent to alter the way we're doing business and get in there and take advantage of these new technologies. It gives some creative opportunities, for companies that are willing to pivot or innovate or start a new business or do all three, to really take advantage of the market and open up and generate some really serious cash flow. Now, one of the biggest industries that's being innovated right now is the financial services area, and that's through this whole open banking approach. And also just generally, the financial services sector has moved leaps and bounds in the last 10 years, if you take a look at it. The whole idea that you could do online instant loans and all this sort of stuff was just completely foreign in the early 2000s, and now it's everyday. So there's a lot of innovation in this area, and there's a lot of room to grow and expand into that innovation. And the key with that is making it simple for the consumer. And some of those opportunities, globally, FinTech investments reached an estimated $20 billion in 2015. That's a few years old now. It's probably even way higher than that. And per the FinTech or Treasury, the URLs at the bottom, the financial services sector is the largest contributor to the national economy. Advancements in R&D represent a crucial opportunity for innovation. So we've got the link there at the bottom. That's fintech.treasury.gov.au, the strength of Australian financial sector. It's well worth having a look at. So really the stage is set for a very rapid, massive expansion into this space. And as Kennedy said, change is the law of life, and those who look only past or the present are certain to miss the future. Really taking advantage of this sort of thing and having a look at how open banking APIs opening up can really benefit, and what you could take leverage of, and how you could expand that area. It really is ripe for those first movers to get in there and take off. So what opportunities are there in open banking? Well, we've had a look and come up with a few, and I'll just go over them now. I think the key one, though, is delivering services in a more relevant and convenient way to businesses and consumers, and simplifying moving from one solution to the next. It's interesting that with the open banking laws that came into place, and with the big four banks having to get that implemented by July, you've seen a lot of innovation from the big four banks around their mobile services platforms and their web services platforms. The amount of new releases that have come out in the last year or two on my, bank app has been quite phenomenal. The amount of investment that they've put into this has been incredible. And I actually think a key driver around this has been that they've seen that open banking is on the horizon. And if they don't innovate, someone else is going to. A bank's key data is all of the transaction history they have with you. And quite often you go to your bank for your source of truth. Did this or did this not, did this charge or did this charge not run through my card? You go and check with your bank because that's the single source of truth. Open banking turns that on its head. You could choose anyone to be that single source of truth. And you could actually end up having one app that shows all of your bank details in one app, instead of having 4 or 5 different apps to log into, for example. So providing this more convenient way for customers to use the system is really going to be powerful moving forward. Another one is to help remove the information advantage that big banks have over startups. So, for example, if you go for a loan to a big bank, they could, although they don't for some reason, look at your past history and say, yep, he can pay for it, or no, he can't. It's pretty surprising to me that a bank will ask, a 50-page application form on a loan, when really they've got all of your data, or they've got a huge amount of it anyway, and they can see the cash flow and how the business is doing and all sorts of things. So they've already got all of this data. But for a small lending startup, you have to ask the customer for this data and somehow get access to their bank details. You have to get the client to send you bank statements and all this sort of stuff to attempt to glean enough data to get it done. With open banking, it could be as simple as asking the customer for permission and the customer just letting you look. And that gives startups a massive opportunity, because you can then access all of the data across all the banks and get that information in and help that customer directly. Even if it's outside of the loaning space, like maybe it could be on a consulting aspect or an investments aspect or things like this. There'll be a lot of information there that you'll be able to get access to that you previously couldn't. Another one which relates to that is really the risk profile analysis that fintechs will be able to do on their customers. You might be able to have a look at a client's data across all of their banking and financial institutions and come up with a risk profile which might be different than one of their banks is willing to give that customer, because they might not have the full picture, or they might not have done that full integration. So this provides a much more tailored and unique position that you can attack on this sector. So why is it being legislated? The problem with open banking is that the incumbent players really have no incentive to do it by themselves, or very little incentive, to be honest. For them to open up this data and give the customer control over their data actually removes some of their competitive advantage of being one of the big fours. And this is why regulators stepped in and forced the adoption of open banking. So these are some of the products that will be included in the open banking aspect. And you can see there's huge amounts there. The amount of information there which we'll be able to access through this platform and this API is really quite impressive. And if you have a look around that, almost every one of those line items could be a whole industry in of itself for a fintech to take advantage of. So what's the timeline here? Open banking was put into the 2017 federal budget. In February 2018, it was announced, the Farrell report was announced with 140 pages of recommendations to cover the whole framework. And then we did out of those 140 pages, there was 51 recommendations that were made. And then in May 2018, it was announced that it would agree to the recommendations. July 2019 would be the date when it officially starts, and the 4 major banks are included in this first implementation. Feb 2020 is the date when the 4 major banks need to make mortgage data available as well. And July 2020, they need to have all product data from the Farrell report available. And then after that, there's 12 months for the smaller banks to get in there and complete their APIs as well. So the scope of open banking, and I just want to say there isn't an attribution link there, but we got this from, this timeline came from finder.com, and we'll make sure that that attribution link's in there on the webinar that we send out, because it's an excellent summary of the timeline. Okay, so what's the scope of open banking? Well, this is a report we got from PwC, Banking and Capital Markets. It's on their website. There's EU open banking equivalent, which is going live. It's called the EU GDPR framework and PSD2, as well as we've got our Farrell recommendations. And you can see there's quite a bit of overlap across both, which really also opens up the opportunity for the FinTech market to go global, well, at least between Australia and Europe, providing a much larger scope of the market. If you take Australia's market and then you add in European market, that's a massive opportunity. So it's well worth understanding that this could actually go global. So let me give you an example of how open banking would work. So Jane, as a customer here, she authenticates herself and authorizes the app to use of needed information. The third party then gets that authorization from the bank. The bank also makes an API call, makes that API available to that third party application. And you get sort of this 3-way trust going on between all the applications. So between the client, the bank, and the accounting software, or whatever the FinTech software is there at the bottom. So Jane is critical in that aspect. She needs to give that authorization and approve it. And there'll be, part of that would be logging into the bank and clicking, yes, I agree, or however that works. But there will be that step of making sure that data is available and made available, and that Jane has authorized that. It's not just a free-for-all of all data. So this is something to consider when you are building this sort of an application. How would that authentication flow work? Whereabouts in the whole process would you want to make sure that Jane is logging in and getting that data and that sort of thing? And that's something that we can definitely help you with in deciding. Now, the problem with new technology is it does bring on its own inherent risk. There are security risks, there are which come under sort of technical, there are unavoidable risks. What if the banking API changes, or what if the market changes? There's budget, how much money have you got to spend on this thing? There's scheduling, how fast do we need to get it done, and being a first mover and how important that is. So there's all these little areas of risk in open banking, and working out how to solve those is pretty critical to any successful project. And there's a really great quote I like from Warren Buffett, which says, risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. Now, a lot of people that come to us for software development really don't know what they're going to be doing. They've got a broad idea about, this is what I want to build, but they've never done it before. Or if they have done a project in the past, they've never done this project before. And there's a lot of things that go into a successful project. So the problem with most technology projects is that there was a 2015 study by the Standish Group that across 50,000 software projects, only or less than 30% were found successful, which is mind-blowing. 52% had major challenges and 19% failed completely. And success is defined as on time, on budget, within scope, and of value to the end user. So with that in place, you really need to work out how you're going to change up what you're doing to make sure that your open banking idea comes to fruition. And we have a solution around that. So why is software delivery hard? Well, there's a wrong planning process, or you're developing in a waterfall manner instead of agile. Waterfall is great. The traditional, I do this and then that enables me to do this, and you have this big Gantt chart. That's great if you're building a life critical system that needs to always work and never have any bugs or someone dies. A lot of software is not like that. A lot of software you can iterate and make sure that if it does fail, it fails in a way that can be fixed. So that can be done in a much more agile manner. It doesn't have to be this waterfall approach. You could have chosen the poor development team. There might be low quality code, might be some unrealistic goals, or not understanding software development enough to make that happen. So the solution is something like our disruption workshop, which handles the problem of those 6 points. So there's a good discovery and planning process. We develop in an agile manner. We have a world-class development team, high quality code, realistic goals, and guided process with software development. So we really make sure that the project has a chance of succeeding as it moves through the steps. Because at the end of the day, building a FinTech startup is an expensive operation. And you want to make sure that you've got the best possible team on that to give you the best chance of making it happen. So to go through the steps of how this works, I'm going to hand you over to Kerry. Kerry's been involved in hundreds of software projects, and he's also got some pretty unique ideas and framework around open banking and how that works. And he'll give you some of his ideas as well. But Kerry, why don't you walk through the disruption process and how we run the workshop, and give them any other ideas that you might have on how this all hangs together.
Yeah, sure, Michael. Thanks very much. And thanks everyone for joining us. So look, the very first step in the process is ideation. And I think you'll find that throughout the 3-step process of the workshop, there's one key message that is repeated throughout, and it's very, very important that it's understood. And that key message is a mantra that I like to use, which is actually from Google, which is focus on the user and all else will follow. And this is really quite critical when it comes to going through the process of coming up with a great idea, discovering what that idea is all about, and then validating that idea with a prototype. And that's ultimately at a high level the 3 steps. So the very first step is the ideation, and every disruption journey begins with a great idea. And it's quite important to understand that an idea is only ever limited by a lack of action. So if you've got a great idea, please take action on it. The only way that idea is going to become real is if you have the motivation and the drive to see that through to the end. So you have to take action on that idea. The next component of the ideation step that we go through is that we brainstorm 5 ideas, and whilst brainstorming those 5 ideas, we need to keep 5 key principles in mind. First of all, dream big. Okay, so every idea, as I said, starts out with that single thought, but you then have to take that somewhere else, and the way you take that somewhere else is dreaming big about that idea. So start out with 0 limitations. The next step is collaboration. So collaborate with your team, collaborate with third parties, collaborate with other partners. That collaboration component helps you get through the process and helps that idea to become a reality faster. The third step, or the third principle, is no idea is a silly idea. So basically in saying that, the sky's the limit. Technology, these days can almost do anything we want it to do, to the point that, with enough time and enough focus, we can create anything. So no idea is necessarily a silly idea. The fourth principle is follow the process. The process that we outline and that we go through within this is a structured process, and it's been proven to work many times over. So follow the process. And the fifth and final principle is to basically come back to that first guiding mantra that I started with, which is stay focused on the customer throughout the entire process. Focus on that customer and what that customer wants, needs, and is missing in their life. So the next, obviously, component of the ideation process then is to choose one with using the initial customer validation process. So the initial customer validation process is all about talking to real customers. It's talking to them, asking them, saying, "Hey, is this a good idea? Would you use this? If we did this, would this be something that you'd be interested in? Or if we change this process internally and started focusing on this kind of component these are the types of questions that we have to ask our customers. And again, just coming back to that simple point of focusing on the user and all else will follow, focusing on that customer and getting that validated feedback from the customer saying yes, no, maybe helps guide the rest of the journey. So the second step in the app workshop is the discovery process. This is where we started to really take that idea that we've nutted out in the first step and really drive and dive into it deeply. Through the discovery process, you're going to understand a couple of key things. You're going to understand what your Idea's product model is. You're going to understand what the lean business model around that product is. And you're also going to understand the unique product value proposition. Now, it's quite important to understand that there's a big difference between a product value proposition and a business value proposition. They're not the same thing. The product has a different value proposition as opposed to the business's value proposition. And throughout the process that we go through to discover, we start to understand what that unique product value proposition is all about. And we do that by understanding what the different customer segments are that would use our product, and to understand who our customers are and what the customer segments is about. And to really dive into what that customer is, we use customer personas, and we create the customer persona around that particular customer segment for that specific product. And it's quite important that we do that. Throughout this process as well, what we're doing is we're generating key assumptions. Now, these key assumptions are very important, and we must make sure that we take note of those key assumptions, because in the next step that we go through with the workshop, we validate those assumptions. So this is where we basically understand what those key assumptions are, and we generate them and create those throughout by using our product model, our business model, and value propositions, customer personas. But also, we want to understand who our early adopters are. And our early adopters in this process are very important, because the early adopters are those people that we will effectively put our validated put our prototype in the hands of to validate. Okay, so those early adopters are the people who, through our product model and through our customer persona, we identify as the first people that we want to put our prototype in the hands of, so that we can validate those key assumptions. And the final component of the discovery process is to understand and define at a high level our revenue streams and our cost structures. Obviously, all products have revenue streams and cost structures, and through this process of discovery that we go through, we understand what those are. Okay, and we do it at a high level. We don't get fine-grained at this point in the process because we're not there yet. Okay, so we haven't reached the point where we need to start getting fine-grained. What we're doing at the moment is we're creating this high-level view of the process, a high-level view of the product that we want to create, and understanding, well, is it financially viable, by looking at high-level revenue and high-level cost. Okay. And then the third step in the process is the prototype. Okay, so we create a prototype and then we validate that prototype. This is effectively where the idea starts to become a reality. Okay, so we discover the user experience and the customer journey. Okay, they're two very key important components of the validation process. We then create a prototype that has all of the assumptions in it that are there ready to validate. Okay, so throughout it, we might think that, oh, look, someone's going to want to use this particular component in this particular way. Well, that's an assumption, right? So we need to make sure in the clickable prototype that we create that process and that thought pattern that we're thinking is correct is within that process. We can then validate that with the customer. And obviously the third step is basically what I've just led into, is validating with real customers using that clickable prototype. Okay. I can't stress the validation that you can get out of this. Like when you see how a customer uses the product, how the customer goes through the product, how the customer, what the customer thinks this particular component on the screen will do for them, as opposed to what you think it will do for them. It's quite interesting. It's a very exciting journey that you go on with the customer, and you learn all about your product. You learn more about your customer, and you find, I suppose, the magic sauce that will make that product the customer's best friend. Okay. And of course, at the end of it, this is where we have our opportunity now to adjust, pivot, and revalidate if required. Okay. So, if we find out that, look, the idea is good, but the way we're presenting it, hasn't got the feedback that we wanted from the customer, we need to adjust that. This is the perfect opportunity to do that. So, I guess the why the strategy? Why are we using this strategy, and what creates this strategy? Well, what makes this strategy work? And there's 5 reasons. First of all, coming back to what I started with, is it focuses on the user. Okay. It focuses on the customer, client, whatever you'd like to label them. It focuses on the person at the end of the day that's going to be using that product, and making it part of their daily lives. So that is one of the key critical components to it. The second is it creates clarity. Okay. So an idea is great, and an idea can have lots of components to it. And, if you're like me, ideas will just start flowing, and, you can go off on all different tangents, which is wonderful. But at the end of the day, what we need to have is a clear and concise picture and some clarity around what that idea is going to do, and around, what value it's going to provide to our customer. And the third thing is it validates the idea. Okay. So it gives you that validation. It proves that yes, it's financially viable. Yes, a customer will use it. And yes, the customer is happy with the way that we're thinking it will work. Fourth thing, it gives you a future roadmap. So, the discovery step doesn't just create what we're going to create in the prototype. It also gives you a much bigger picture and a much bigger view of what will come down the road. Okay. So it starts to give you your product roadmap as well. So it shows that, in the next 12 months, this is what we're probably going to get to. In the next 18 months, this is where we could get to with this product, right? So it gives you the much broader, bigger picture as well, which is exciting because it helps drive you, it helps drive the people that are working on the product, and also keeps your customers interested as well. And the fifth and final reason why this strategy works is because it's been proven. It's been proven many times over. It works. I've personally done implemented the strategy in my own startups, and I've also implemented this strategy for clients as well, and it just works. It's a proven strategy that works every time. So the next question, I suppose, is what's the outcome out of this? And the outcome out of this is that you end up with a validated business model, a validated product model, and a prototype that has been validated as well ready for agile development, right? So this is now where we can kick into actually creating the product in an agile methodology and delivering small components to the client and the customer in short intervals, so that they keep interested in the product and they stay excited about the amazing solution that an idea that you've built and delivered. So look, with that, that's effectively the overview of the app workshop. What I'll do now is hand back to Michael, who will take you through some of the fine-grained details.
Thank you very much, Kerry. We've had some great chats happening in the background, and thanks very much to Michael, who, if you look on the chats page, he put in some valuable data about how the delay to the open banking launch goes to no later than February 2020. I did have that in the timeline. I just forgot to mention that when we were going through the first thing. So thanks very much, Michael, for bringing that up and making sure we all knew about that. So yeah, overall, there's a huge opportunity in this space, and working through the various opportunities and getting them done and figuring it out, that's the key aspect of what we're talking about with this sort of app workshop and disruption workshop details. It is something that we can run with any client anywhere, and it's a very valuable process of getting that client to really ideate around what's available and look into the documentation and go, well, hang on, we could actually pull in this data, or we could pull in that data, and get rolling now, so that by the time the launch comes in February, you're ready to roll, or you might have a month or two of final integrations or things like that. So it's pretty important that we start these sorts of opportunities and discussions early with the clients. There's also an aspect of security and making sure that there's enough time to make sure your systems are secure and you don't end up with an amazing data breach. So what is the workshop itself? Well, we'll give you an overview. There's the 2-day ideation workshop. That's where you come up with all the crazy ideas and opportunities that can be run in the system. And deliverable on that is a report of all the ideas with a rationale for the winning chosen idea out of whatever comes out of that. Then we actually do the discovery workshop, which is where we go through and make sure that we produce a document that shows, well, what is this application trying to do, approximate budgets around what's available, what the MVP is going to be, and all that sort of thing. Then we build a validation prototype, which is a clickable online prototype of the system, including a day of user testing. There can always be more if need be, but that's what's included in the package, as well as some design mock-ups on the key pages. And then we give you a proposal to build out that MVP, including a detailed scope and proposal to build with a whole estimated costs. So that app workshop, we have a special. It's normally about $35,000 worth of list price work, and we've got a special at $29,950. We also have a special we've worked out with Salesforce Heroku in terms of hosting these applications and getting them online, as well as a special discount on the development of it. So if you'd like to find out more about that, you can definitely let us know. So that's the overall webinar. I like keeping them fairly sharp at half an hour. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. There was a question there asking if we have any experience from the UK side over the last 18 to 24 months. We have done some work in this area. Unfortunately, due to the way that market's operating, we're under extremely tight NDAs around that. But what I can say is that it's been a complex road. And there's a lot of things that need to be addressed and handled as part of that process. And it's much better off getting started earlier than later, because there's quite a few various regulatory and other roadblocks that can come up and get in the way.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Michael, as well, some of the things that we've seen coming out of the UK at a very general level is that those financial services institutions that haven't participated in open banking or who haven't participated, to the full extent of the capabilities of open banking have actually lost significant market share. And there's a report that was released about 6 months ago that showed, that those institutions that weren't embracing open banking had actually lost significant market share. So it was quite interesting to see that's the way that market has shifted, and that the public perception, I suppose, of open banking was fully embraced, and those that didn't join that queue were left behind.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. There was one other question from Paul, which was asking, will the banks have an accreditation process to ensure they're sharing with valid third parties? That's a great question. It's a very good point. And yes, there is a validation and accreditation process that is part of the open banking protocols that are being implemented in Australia. So that yes, that those parties know that the people that the data is being shared with are allowed and validated to see that data.
Yeah, excellent. All right. If there aren't any other questions at this point, we'll end off the webinar. However, we will be sending out the slides to everyone so you can take a look at those. And if you do have any questions, feel free to just email us directly and we can definitely answer to the best of our ability. If you would like some more information about the app workshop and getting that rolling, obviously you can contact us as well. And if you have any ideas or questions or suggestions on other webinars you'd like us to cover, please feel free to let us know. So overall, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kerry, for your presentation. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And we'll end off now.
Thank you, Michael. And thanks to everyone.
Okay. Bye for now.